I'm here to talk to you around youth justice and how we fit within the wider criminal justice system. It is a very whistle-stop tour, so please, there's some contact details at the end if you want to get in touch and find out some more. So in very brief history of youth justice. So the criminal age of responsibility was raised to 8 in 1963, and in 1998, youth offending teams, as we were called then, were established through the Crime and Disorder Act. And there's some other bits of legislation that I've popped in here as well. And there's a comprehensive history of youth justice and a timeline as a resource if people want to go through and have a look at a more thorough introduction to youth justice. The main change that people may have heard of as well was in 2012, where the old system of reprimands, final warnings was abolished, and we now have our community resolutions, youth cautions and conditional cautions for children. So we became youth offending teams in 1998, and over the last few years we have very much changed our names to youth justice teams or youth justice services. So in Somerset we are a youth justice team, and this has come about through a guiding principle of child first, which was brought by the Youth Justice Board. So we really recognise children as children first, and the behaviour that they're presenting with is secondary. So all of our assessments, our work, our interventions, the language we use ensures that we have a child first perspective in everything that we do. We are also trauma informed within our practice, and we use the trauma recovery model and the enhanced case management model for working with children who have significant trauma in their history. We have a psychologist, a clinical psychologist within our team, and she supports and leads case formulation for children, and we work with them with a trauma informed lens. So who are we in Somerset? So our service manager, who recently came into post, is Samantha Farhay, or Sam Farhay. We have an operations manager, and then our teams are made up of an east and west team leader. I'm based in the east of Somerset, and my colleague Lynn Pickup is in the west of Somerset. And then we have practitioners, so case managers, who will also support with our court duty role. And we have a restorative justice team made up of a reparation worker, a volunteer coordinator, and a victim worker. We have various seconded staff by law who have to form part of, under the Crime and Disorder Act, youth justice services, youth justice teams. So we have staff seconded to us from police, probation, health. We also link incredibly closely with the local authority around education. We have a number of statutory volunteer roles that sit under legislation within our service. So we provide appropriate adults to children within police stations who are undergoing custodial episodes with police or who are attending for voluntary attender interviews. And we also have referral order panel members that are a statutory part of our referral order process when we're working with courts. We have a number of other volunteer opportunities as well. So we provide advocacy around family group conferencing. We also have some reparation volunteers and some volunteers that do some direct one-to-one work with children. So if anybody's interested in volunteering for us, please do let me know. And we have an amazing business support team, including our duty team, who speak to various different colleagues, including police, probation, within the criminal justice system on a daily basis. So what do we do? I only have a couple of minutes to talk about what do we do, and it's really hard to whittle it down really. So we provide children with pre-court support. So I've mentioned the appropriate adults for children that we provide through our volunteers. We work with children providing bail support. So that's children who are either police bailed or court bailed. So that's pre-sentencing. We complete some diversion work. So we work very closely with the early intervention team. We have our turnaround project, which is funded through the Youth Justice Board, which diverts children away from the formal criminal justice system. We have a Teachable Moments project where we're outreaching into schools at the moment, working closely with partners in schools for children who are at risk of exclusion and therefore at risk of entering the criminal justice system if the behaviours are showing there. And we have an out-of-court panel that sits weekly in Somerset, but alternates between East and West, where we have children diverted to us from police who have admitted criminal offences, and we will work to support them under a diversionary route. If children are charged to court, then we will provide pre-sentence reports for court, very much like probation would for adults. So we write court-ordered reports to recommend sentencing for children. That could be a community sentence or a custodial sentence, depending on the severity and type of crime. We have our court duty officers. So we have a weekly court in Somerset, again alternating east and west between South Somerset and Taunton. So our court duty officers will appear on youth court days and support children to process their way through court. And we also work with police who, when children are detained overnight and are held and placed before the court the following morning for a variety of reasons. So we will appear for planned and unplanned court appearances with children. The assessment framework that we use is the Asset Plus framework, changed from Asset back in 2016 time. So every child that's relevant to a statutory outcome with us will have an Asset Plus assessment. It's a really full formal assessment looking at the needs of the child, the behaviours they're demonstrating, any risk and safety and wellbeing considerations for children, and then moving into what are we going to do about it, so our planning and our work alongside multi-agency. We also have what we call our fact-finding document, shortly to be replaced with another tool from the Youth Justice Board in terms of our diversionary and out-of-court work that we do with young people. So it follows the same procedures as an Asset Plus, it's just not so much of a huge assessment tool as an Asset Plus. We also work with children who display harmful sexual behaviour. So you heard from Op Ruby earlier. So children who are subject to criminal processes for sexual behaviour. We will complete very specific specialised assessments with those called AIM 3 assessments, and then we will use those to inform court sentencing and then interventions post-court. We have a multi-agency risk panel that is chaired monthly by our operations manager, and that is for children who are assessed as displaying high or very high risk of serious harm to others, or who have high or very high safety and wellbeing concerns for themselves, and partner agencies are invited to that. And then we have our day-to-day case management of children who are subject to court orders, so within the community, and also our custody, and we support children around resettlement, which I'll talk a little bit about later. So when children appear in court, it's often asked of us in terms of bail and remand decisions. So if a court refuses to bail a child, they are required to remand that child. There are two types of remand considerations for courts. So they can remand to a local authority accommodation, or when certain conditions are met, they may remand a child to youth detention accommodation. Children automatically become looked after under a remand threshold, remand status. So we'll work really closely with our colleagues within children's social care if that applies. So I mentioned resettlement from custody. So when we're resettling children who have served a custodial sentence or have been remanded into custody for a period of time, we work very clearly within 7 pathways around resettlement. So it's a positive focus for children, developing children's pro-social identity and supporting them to positively resettle back into the community. So very whistle-stop tour through youth justice. There's some contact details there, but if anybody has any additional questions, please let me know.